I think I was probably well suited for the Korean War. Between enlistments, I had worked in the coal mines, and I was pretty rugged, you know. So when I got to Korea, I could run the mountains like a mountain goat, you know, and they were carrying all kind of equipment, and it didn't bother me. I got there in July of 1951, and immediately went online. I served with almost every company there in the regiment out on the front line. Anybody that, anything of platoon strength or higher that went behind enemy lines, I had to go with them.
January 1952. With temperatures holding at 20 below and a foot of snow on the ground, the United States would learn just how suited then Corporal Ron Rosser of the 38th Infantry was for battle.
Now, this young lieutenant, he was behind a little rock and was shooting at the Chinese. And he looked at me and he said, "Soldier, what's your name?" And I said, "My name's Rosser, sir." And he said, "Do you know what you're doing?" I said, "Yes, sir. I'm killing these varmints as fast as I can." I realized I was in deep trouble, but I thought about it just a second. I said, well, I went to a lot of trouble to get here. No use wasting the whole day, so I let out a war whoop and jumped in the trench with them.
Ron Rosser was on a mission: avenge his younger brother's death and save American lives. It was January 12, 1952, and U.S. soldiers were dropping from enemy fire all around him as he made his way up that ridge in Korea.
The Chinese were waiting on me in the trench, and for some reason they didn't shoot me right away, waiting for me to get close, I guess. And when I was about 10 yards from them, they raised up to shoot me, and I threw my first grenade, and it went right in the trench with them and busted them up. And as I went over the trench, I dropped the second-hand grenade on them and took care of them those behind me. I finally started running out of ammunition again, so I worked my way back to the first trench and firing as I went. By the time I got to the trench, I was out of ammunition, and I was checking my coat pocket to see if I had any magazines left, and I didn't. And a Chinese soldier ran right up on top of me, and I was in the trench, and he was standing on top of me, and he started to shoot me. And I didn't have no ammunition, but he didn't know that. So I swung my carbine up at his face, and for about a second we looked at each other, and then I screamed right in his face, and he threw his hands up in front of his face and he let out a moan and took out running.
On this day, Ron Rosser battled the enemy for 90 minutes. He doesn't remember how many he took out. From the citation for his Medal of Honor, quote, "During this heroic action, Corporal Rosser single-handedly killed at least 13 of the enemy, and though himself wounded, made several trips across open terrain still under enemy fire to help remove other men injured more seriously than himself," end quote.
I never really worried about, getting hurt. And I never worried about the war very much either. Most of the time I was just too busy to worry about it. My job was to take care of these other people. And I was so busy doing that I didn't have time most of the time to think about myself. I always wanted to be a soldier, and the way I realized it, the more enemy I took out, the less Americans died. And one time people asked me why I did this stuff, and I just said that others might live.
When Ron Rosser received his Medal of Honor from President Truman, it was a family affair. In fact, a bus carried the Rosser family from Ohio to the White House to see this first of 17 children be honored by his country.
We walked out into the Rose Garden, and I think that's probably the most afraid I ever was in my life. I didn't know what was going to happen to me, but I knew then that my life was going to be different. I had no idea why, but I knew it was going to be different. And I knew that from that day on, I always had to have a sense of honor and live an honorable life. I didn't want to do anything to disgrace the medal. I feel that the men that were with me that day earned the medal as much as I did. I just happened to be the most colorful one, and I made it to the top. A lot of them tried, but didn't make it. I'm honor bound to remember those people.
I grew up in an environment in which the assumption was that when you got to be old enough, you would go do your bit. You'd serve for a while and then get out and go do whatever you're going to do.
Jack Jacobs grew up in Brooklyn with a clear view of his future: college, Army service, law school. But the need to feed his wife and 2 small children motivated him to change his military course of action.
I got to Vietnam after being in the 82nd Airborne Division, which was my first tour. My first assignment was in Charlie Company, 2nd Battalion Airborne, 505th Infantry. And I went airborne at least partially for the same reason I went through senior ROTC. They paid you extra. They paid me an extra $100 a month. And so the airborne pay was great. And, you know, it's not hard work. You're with really good people who are really serious about what they're doing, and they're great soldiers. And they're going to pay you, they're going to give you a 50% increase in salary to prove that gravity works.
By March of 1968, Jack Jacobs was an advisor with the 2nd Battalion, 16th Infantry of the Vietnamese 9th Infantry Division. Combat was non-stop, and the enemy was growing in numbers. On the 9th of March, the plan was to go on the attack to take on the Viet Cong over a beach on the Mekong River.
Now, when you go on an operation like this and you think you know where the enemy is, but you're not sure, rule number 1 is that you don't want to engage the bad guys in a meeting engagement with your entire force because you can't maneuver against them. They had had a spy in the province chief's headquarters and it had 3 days to emplace 300 VC in an enormous L-shaped ambush. And in the space of about 10 seconds, we lost, 75 guys killed and wounded in 10 seconds.
One of the most severely wounded was Jack Jacobs. From the citation for his Medal of Honor, quote, "Despite profuse bleeding from head wounds which impaired his vision, Captain Jacobs contacted and drove off Viet Cong squads who were searching for Allied wounded and weapons, single-handedly killing 3 and wounding several others. Extraordinary heroism saved the lives of 1 U.S. advisor and 13 Allied soldiers," end quote.
People ask me, why'd you keep going back? I mean, you bring a guy to safety, you don't have to go back out. But I thought, and whether it's true or not doesn't matter, I thought that I was the only guy who could do it, that everybody else was killed or wounded. It's not okay to just do your job. It's got to be the best job you possibly can do. And so if somebody says, oh, you did something really extraordinary, it isn't extraordinary. It's what's expected in combat. You're not allowed to lay back there and, wait for somebody else to do it. You got to do it.